Hey there, folks. Austin Baumgarten here with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana, coming to you from the Hidden Home Show. We are on episode number 7, and we have a lovely guest, Mrs. Katie Wood of katiewood.com. She is basically a coach of all sorts, and I would almost say kind of like a brand ambassador to an extent. I'm going to give a little bit of bio of the background around her and what she has done to come to the Flathead Valley. Basically, the Hidden Home Show in general, what we're talking about today and what we've been talking about are people's goals, why they either have moved to Montana or why they love Montana, what they've seen in the community, and just kind of giving a community vibe in general about their experiences here. And that's kind of what we're going to be talking about mostly today. So, a little bit of background about Mrs. Katie Wood. Katie Wood is a coach who works with talented and thoughtful leaders, creatives, and business owners who are doing important work but struggle with burnout and stress. She helps them get clear on how they can hit big goals with more ease so they can actually enjoy the process of doing work that matters for the long haul. With over a decade of work in successful startups, as well as freelancing with Fortune 500 companies, Katie has a passion for maximizing potential in the team she works with, as well as the systems that support them. Her background is teaching wilderness leadership courses also greatly influences her approach to problem solving, as great communication skills, route finding, and a little grit can help in almost any situation. So background too with schooling, graduated from Willamette University with a Bachelor of Arts.
Willamette.
Did I say Willamette?
No, it's okay. Willamette.
Whatever. No, I'm gonna get in trouble. No, seriously, that's a big one. Rocky Mountain School of Photography, Coaches Training Institute, HubSpot, and also Knowles course. So definitely have a background in outdoors, which is pretty sweet too. Anyway, so we're gonna just dive right in. I guess the question usually is, who is Katie Wood? Why is Katie Wood here? And just a little background about your, maybe even your first job and kind of how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Big existential, who is Katie Wood question.
Who is she?
I love it. So like you said, I'm a coach. I mean, that's what my current profession is right now. But I have a background. My career is ping-ponged all over the place. And it's, looking back, it's gotten me to exactly where I want to be, but it's taken a really circuitous route to get there. I'm originally from Wyoming, a little tiny town on the reservation. Just 300 people, kind of tiny, really, really small.
That's super small.
Yeah. We have those in Montana too, obviously, but really little town, and grew up and just loved the mountains and loved being outside, and did a lot of art. My mom was an artist, and my dad worked for the Nature Conservancy in Wyoming. So we did a lot of, just trying to keep outdoor spaces beautiful. That was a big part of my background. But went to school, grew up there, loved living in the rural West. I went to school in Oregon. And after I went to school, I graduated, and I thought I'd come back to Wyoming, specifically to Jackson, Wyoming for, I thought a year.
Jackson Hole.
Yeah, Jackson Hole, right?
Okay.
I thought, I'll come back for a year and do the ski bum thing and, kind of get my kicks. And so that turned into 10 years because these beautiful mountain towns just draw you right in. So, so I spent a decade in Jackson, and I did a whole bunch of things. At first, it was kind of the fun 20-year-old careers of raft guiding and bartending, and I worked for Knowles, like you mentioned, the National Outdoor Leadership School. I took people camping, teaching them outdoor skills, which was great. And then at some point it switched, and I needed to get a little bit serious.
You needed to grow up a little bit more.
A little growing up, yeah.
I understand.
So I randomly kind of took a job as a startup. There was this Kate's, what is it called? Kate's Real Food now. That's the new name. But she's an organic energy bar manufacturing company. But when it started, it was just this woman who had a great product and a dream. And I was the first person she hired once she got an investor on board. And, now you'll find it in REI and Whole Foods, and it's on Delta. They serve Kate's.
I think I've actually seen that before. So.
Yeah,
Okay.
You'll see it. They're really good, actually.
Okay.
But that was kind of my first foray into business, and I thought I didn't really have any background or experience, but it seemed like a creative position. I could use my brain in a bunch of different ways, and I jumped in and learned a whole bunch about small business. It was the kind of thing where when you're in a startup, it's you're wearing 1,000 different hats. You're doing marketing, you're also scrubbing the toilets, you're also shipping orders, you're also, you know the deal. So I really kind of fell in love with small business at that point. And that was where it got started. And then over the years, I worked for a number of other small businesses and startups, and those started to grow, and I got into e-commerce and all these other fun things. At which point, at some point, I thought, okay, it's been really fun to be on these teams, but I want to run my own show a little bit. So I started doing more marketing consulting and all sorts of kind of marketing-based services for people. And slowly but surely, I realized that a big piece of the puzzle for me was the coaching piece, the person piece. Who's running the show? Like, I can advise you on marketing, but if I know more about who you are and what your values are and what really gets you fired up, then I can do a better job of actually getting to you to hit your goals.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. When I did the branding for Hidden Homes, we had to like sit down and do like a branding deck and all these different things. Like they'd never met me before, and I wanted them to pull it out of my brain. I was like, it's right here. This is it. Can't you see it? And luckily the people we had used at that time did a good job of doing it, but it was a lot of work. So I can only imagine that's got to be hard to be able to pull that out of people. So I guess with that, what kind of tools do you use to pull that out of people other than just getting to know them?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because for a while I was really doing this, like I was doing more branding, design, marketing materials, collateral, point of sales stuff for people, more design work. And at some point there was a switch where I started like, ooh, wait, I got this coach training and I was like, I actually want to work more with people in this other way. So there was like, I kind of like pivoted slowly away from just the brand kind of conversations. But I think the tools in general that I use for anything I work with leaders is like getting clear on what do you care about? What's important to you as a person, as a leader? And then really obviously importantly too, like what's important to your customer? Who are they? What are they, looking at, excited by? What are they really hoping to get? What are they hoping to achieve with working with you? And kind of finding some happy medium there.
Well, you mentioned something too, even in just the bio, is about like the, getting burned out and trying to keep people away from that as much as they can. Because I'm doing it right now. I'll be honest with you, like I've the ebbs and flows, like it's different days, right? But like that consistency and stuff. So what have you found kind of in your business to maybe help people calm down, a little bit? Because you're working with entrepreneurs, right? And you are one yourself.
And people are hungry and they're driven and they have big goals, right? So like we're almost set up to drive and go fast and go hard. And then, so I think part of it is like saying, okay, yes, we see that. And how can we take the long view here? Like, what's the big picture? How can we pull up and make sure that we're not just like, sprinting 1,000,000 miles an hour for like, what does this look like in 5 years if you don't shift or adjust, right? So part of it is like, what is the big picture? What is how can we think about this? For a lot of entrepreneurs, it's like they are driven and they're really good at a lot of things. They're really competent. So then they take on all of those roles themselves. And then they actually become the bottleneck at some point, right? Now decisions can't get made without them involved. And so now there's a point where it works, and then there's a point where it starts to slow them down. So they have to get good at delegation. They have to get good at building up other team members to make decisions and to transfer some leadership. And that's hard to do at first, like we
type D personality, like, I got it all. I'm the only one that does it the best.
Exactly.
That's what I find a lot of times, like no one can do it.
Yep. And so part of the task there is getting really clear on like, what is that you as an entrepreneur are best at? What can only you do? And how should you really be using is this the best use of your time right now, this moment, this thing, this task, this thing? So you'll start to get clear once you even just start pinging those questions around in your head. Like, is this the best use of my time right now? Could someone else do this at least 70% as well as I could? If so, you hand it off. Like, you have to get used to like that, because the sooner you hand it off, right, the better it becomes.
So what kind of accountability do you give to your clients? That's it.
Well, that's the fun thing, actually, honestly. The accountability is half the battle, because it's so easy to talk about in the moment, like, well, here's what you should do, or here's the plan to, you know, give this part to your team, or to kind of be in a bigger leadership position where you're really using your time more wisely. It's easy to say that when I say, okay, Austin, what are you going to do? And you're like, okay, I'm going to do it. And then you get back to the office on Monday, and guess what? Like, it goes right back to that old pattern. So part of it is to say, okay, what are you going to commit to really specifically? And we start with baby steps. Like, we don't, you know, you can't like do this huge step all at once. We start with a baby step. Let's just try a little bit. Let's just try this next thing. Okay, try that for 3 days, see how it goes. And then I'll check in. Hey, how'd it go? And either you say like, oh, okay, I didn't do it. And so then it's not bad necessarily. It's just like, oh, something else needs a shift here, so that you can feel good about the decision you're making, and getting clear on, am I making the decisions for the reasons I like or not?
Or kind of what stopped you from doing that? Like,
Right.
what was that? What
Right.
happened? Can you identify
Yeah.
that moment
Yeah.
that happened to stop you from doing what you wanted to do?
100%. And
Yeah.
so it's either your own resistance, or some sort of like control thing. I just didn't feel like I could trust this person, or I just thought it would be easier if I did it. So sometimes it's just a thought pattern. Other times it really is, oh, we just don't have the right person for this role, or we need to come up with a better system. So sometimes it's a little bit more practical, tactical. Like, we just need a better system for this to be organized.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's very much like, oh, this is my own stuff that I need to work through.
Got it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, tell me a little bit about why you're in Montana. How did you get to Montana from Jacksonville, Wyoming?
Yeah.
And then we're going to talk about the community a little bit that you've been in, because you've been here for a few years.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I've been here for 6 years. The way I got here is kind of funny, actually. So we'd been in Jackson for a long time and loved so many aspects of being there, but it was getting to the point where it was pretty expensive, and like buying a house there was really tough. Speaking of real estate, it was just really tough. And so we knew we kind of wanted to look for another community that had similar things, right? National park. We loved being outdoors. Community that's kind of centered around those sorts of passions, the same as we are.
Yeah.
So we looked at a bunch of different places, and we actually thought we were going to move to Bozeman. So we put in a deal on a piece of property there. We put in an offer, and the deal fell through. And it was for a number of reasons, but we were just really bummed, because it was like, you know, we'd been trying in Jackson for a while and didn't work, and then we tried in Bozeman, and this didn't work, for zoned in a weird way. And we were just like, kind of defeated, deflated. Mm-hmm. And we randomly, like a week later, our friends who grew up here invited us up for a weekend sailing on Flathead Lake. And we're like, yeah, sure, like whatever. I've heard of Flathead Lake, but I really didn't have any clue how amazing it was. So we drove up, sailed all weekend on the lake, and blown away, of course, as anybody who, like, just amazing. It's just breathtaking, and the missions are there and all the things. So we kind of like randomly, Buck, who's the owner, who we sail with, the owner of Dayton Marina, we just casually mentioned to him, like, hey, if there's a sailboat for sale, like, let us know. And he called us a week later and said, I have a boat for you. Why don't you check it out? And Scott, turned to me at this point and said, should we just buy a boat in Montana? And I was like, I mean, it doesn't make any sense on paper. We don't live there. We don't have jobs there. It doesn't make any sense, but we're like, why not? Let's just try it. Like, let's just do this thing. It felt like this new burst of energy. So we bought this little boat and spent the summer driving up from Wyoming and, staying for a week, coming back down, and fell in love as people do. As people do.
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah. So then that fall we actually decided to look for property and found a great spot. And so that was 6 years ago, and we've just loved it ever since.
I don't think I've ever met anyone that just bought a boat first and then lived.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense.
It sounds a little backwards, but when you have the passion for doing that.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand sailing's amazing. Oh, and by the way, Katie and I sail together.
Yeah, that's right.
That's a disclaimer.
Yeah.
Well, that's fantastic. So, I mean, you've been here, like I said, a few years. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the valley's ever shifting. It's always changing. Completely. Obviously, the past couple years have been kind of mind blowing with what
Yeah.
the influx of people, just not just from out of state, but just just the movement around the valley and the growth in general. I mean, that's obviously changed. What do you think since you moved here? Let's say 2000. What, 16?
16, yeah.
So 2016. What's the biggest changes you've seen in maybe Flathead County? You know, just in general, because you're back and forth across the lake. So
we're kind of, we cover a lot of bases. We live between Whitefish and Columbia Falls. We come to Kalispell a lot. We're down in Dayton. We're kind of all over. I'd say, well, interestingly, like the first year or two when we moved up here, and people would say, "Oh, well, you're coming to the valley. It's really getting busy here. It's really getting crazy." And we had just come from Jackson. We were like, "What are you talking about? It's not great. It's like, it feels great. It feels calm and cool and like no big deal." So it has been interesting to notice just an uptick in general of just activity, traffic, people, movement. You know, the summertime, especially in the summertime, it just feels like it's just busier. And I think that some of that is, you know, to be expected. You live in a beautiful place. It's to be expected. It's going to happen. I hope that, you know, the thing that sometimes I really hope that communities, like as we grow and expand, that we kind of keep that like intimate feel that we have, that people are still really nice. Like one of the things I just noticed when we first came to town was just people were just so friendly, and people would say hi, and the, you know, your grocery store clerk would make conversation with you, and it felt very personable. So, and I haven't seen that shift yet, but I know that sometimes that can be like the first thing that starts to shift, is we just start to feel disconnected from one another. Yeah. So I really hope that we can kind of keep that feel, or that community mindedness, as it gets busier, as it grows more. Of course, there's like cool opportunities that come in too. Lots of new businesses and new activities to do, and like there's some really fun stuff that happens with growth. So I think it's a matter of like noticing the positive, and also hopefully as a community making sure that we protect the reasons that we're all here. Like there's nothing I love more than driving through farmland and big open fields and spaces and seeing the mountains and having the vistas. So hopefully like we can kind of walk that fine line of bringing people in and making space for folks, and also making sure that we're keeping the character alive. And that's tricky to do.
Well, no, and it is, and you know, just even some changes, like even in the workforce and stuff like that, and trying to, you know, people, you know, not necessarily. Well, I mean, there's problems employing people right now. Yeah. And so that's a hard one too, because then you start losing a little bit of the customer service part of it, because they're trying their hardest, you know, to get there, and then there's all these people here, and so there's that, and so I think it's going to balance itself out, and that growth, no matter what, you know, all growth is a little bit painful. Oh yeah, you know, in general, and it's like just like that change. People are always resistant to it too. I am too. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, the same thing. It's like I don't want to do that. Yeah. But I mean, the things that I know like we can do, like you're saying, like I mean, seriously, the driving down a back road, wave off your steering wheel is a must. Yes. It's a number one thing.
I love that.
Got to do it. I even saw like a Facebook post about it about a year ago, and it was like a big. And me and my wife were just like, hey, Carly and I were just like, I was like, that's perfect. We see that, and she's been seeing that for the past 20. Yeah. Well, sorry. 30 something years. We're not going to talk about age.
Don't put any numbers out there.
But other than that, I mean, same thing too, walking down, you know, Main Street, and I still see the shop owners and people we see, like we know all over the place, you know, and to continue doing that and being accepting of all the new people coming in, then it's the best thing we can do. Yeah.
And kind of just like make sure that our culture, you know, like that idea of friendliness and making sure that people are like, wave to your neighbor, say hi to people, like that doesn't become something like we introduce people to that, as opposed to going the opposite way. If they're not used to that, then like
we need to remind them.
Yeah, hey, here's how we do small towns.
Well, and I mean, I don't know if you've been to a big city recently, and I haven't been to a lot, like in the past 10 years really, but I've been to a few, and it is, I understand, because there's so many human beings.
You're just heads down,
and their heads
going.
down, you know, and of course those darn phones.
I know.
Just kidding. Darn phones and those kids these days.
You're sounding curmudgeon-y.
I know. I turned 40, and so that's just what happened, right? No, that's great. Thank you, Katie. Appreciate that. Yeah. And so when it comes down to, you know, community in general, what we've been talking about, what things have you done for the community? I don't know if it's boards, if it's contribution of some sort, because I know we've talked about that on the sailboat, some things, but I can help shine some light on that. Like, what contribution do you feel like you're able to give, and do you?
Well, it's interesting. Actually, one of my goals for this coming year is to get on a board again. I used to sit on boards back in Wyoming, and I was doing a lot of them, and then I got burnt out, as it goes sometimes. But I just realized in the last year or two, like, oh yeah, I want to do that again, because I feel like that's a really, like, that's something I can offer to the community in certain ways. So I have some feelers out about boards that I might be useful to sit on.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there's this element where I work with so many businesses in the community that I feel like I have this like inside glimpse into what's going on with all of them, because I do work with a lot of like the founders and the leaders and people who are doing all sorts of things in the community. So obviously it's not a volunteer thing. It's a service I provide, but it feels I love the connection that it creates, because I'll work with somebody and be like, oh, you know who you should connect with is this person. And it feels very like, it starts to feel like just that small town feel where we can all help each other out, or this person has this insight that could be really useful for this other business to thrive, or whatever, that sort of thing. Has been really fun to feel connected to a lot of different people just through the work that I do. So my next challenge is kind of doing a little bit more like some volunteer work and taking it to the next level of being helpful in another way.
Well, that actually, what you just said right there is kind of the same thing with parts of the real estate.
Yeah.
Is that, like what I found out in real estate, it's similar to restaurant industry, is like we're dealing with so many people, different vendors, and we're basically just connectors. We're like these conduits between people.
Yeah.
And I think that's kind of one of the coolest things that I know I can deliver, and it sounds kind of like what you're doing too, is that, if you know a lot of people, you're going to be able to help a lot of people.
Yeah. Or you can see something that really worked for this person in this industry, but you can see, oh yeah, it could work for this person too. And even if it's not a service, but it's just an approach, or it's just all these different ways that you can kind of see, like, here's how businesses thrive in this, small rural community. I mean, not that the area is there's a lot of more people here, but we're still pretty isolated from.
We're still a rural community,
right? Yeah, like we don't have a lot of stuff. So how can they thrive in these areas, and what can they do? It feels really fun to be able to connect and have those conversations with people, and just see what's working, what's not. How can they adjust? How can they, even the camaraderie, I think, is huge. Like I was part of a women's small business networking group for a while before COVID, and we get together once a month, and it was so great everybody would just share stories and ideas and insights, and we just sit down at Kalispell Brewing and have a beer and talk about what's working, what's not, where are you frustrated, how do you need help, and those sorts of things I think are really powerful, because it's like we can leverage all those connections.
I like that.
Yeah,
it's something. There's something about sitting down, like you even said, that group mentality too, and just starting the mastermind group, almost like it's like
exactly.
Every conversation could almost be considered like a mastermind, because what it is you're pouring things out into people, and it just kind of reverberates, and so connection's huge. And I'm just thinking about that right now. It's just because I love actually sitting in group settings with people that are kind of like-minded. It expands. You can feel it.
Yeah, and it's great too, because I think the other thing that feels helpful, I mean, maybe this is business owners, but maybe it's just anybody, is you see people show up and you kind of think, oh, that person has their act together, or like, oh, they're a big player in their industry or whatever, and then they say, man, I really need help with this, or I'm really struggling with this thing, and you realize that we're all we all have stuff that we're trying to figure out still.
Everyone
and then
does.
B, when people come and ask for help, and then you can lend a hand in some way, whether it's just insight or a tip or kind of camaraderie along the way, like it's huge. It's like makes all of this so much easier and better and more fun to do.
So along those lines of networking and everything, obviously with your coaching program, like what we talked about the goals of like what you've been doing for the community, but what are your personal and professional goals for, I guess, till the end of the year, really, the next few months, obviously going forward, but 2022. Do you have any immediate things that are happening?
Well, one is kind of exciting. I'll share, because I just, I don't know if I achieved it. It's a goal. What I really wanted to do an international trip, and I just got back from an international trip, which felt really fun to be gone and be out of the country and just, change up the scenery. So that felt like a personal goal. I wanted to travel again, and that felt really fun. The other personal goal is really, honestly, I just want to get in the mountains for an extended trip, because if you live here, like, there's nothing better than waking up in a tent in the mountains here. It's magic. So it's easy to get caught up in all the things, and the calendar gets full really fast. So hopefully September is what I'm looking for there to get in the mountains. And then professionally, I started a small group coaching program last spring, which is a kind of leadership program for small entrepreneurs. And so I'd like to fill that out again this fall, because I usually work one-on-one with people, but I found this like collective energy really exciting, and like, oh yeah, I love bringing people together. Actually, that feels really good. So I'd like to fill that out, run that program. And then the other one I mentioned a little bit, but I'd like to find a board to sit on maybe before the end of the year, or, kind of at that changeover of the year.
The changing of the guard, usually right around December 31st.
Yeah, so kind of put some feelers out, and there's a few folks that I've been talking to that I think could be kind of a good fit. But yeah, so it's like kind of community-minded, my own business, and then mountains.
Hey, folks, she's looking for a board. There's a lot. I know that people are out there looking for board members. So Katie Wood, perfect choice, candidate.
That's right.
Excellent. Let's see here. So what are your? Well, I already know one of your favorite activities.
That's
so
true.
what are your 3 favorite activities in Northwest Montana?
It's so hard to narrow it down. But yeah, one of them is certainly sailing, because it's just magic. I mean, it's fun to be out on the water, whether it's racing like we do on Tuesday nights at the North End, or it's just sailing, just down pleasure cruise, kind of bopping around, going to Wild Horse Island, or any of those things. It's just magical. So sailing for sure gets on the top of the list. Mountain biking ends up being one of my favorite things. I love the trails. I don't know, something about that mountain biking is just super
Do you do
fun
downhill?
for me. I used to do more downhill. I've gotten scared as I've gotten older.
Super
I
dangerous.
don't want to wreck that hard. So I'm fine with cross country. Every now and then I'll go down something a little bit, more terrifying. But I used to do a lot more of it. Now I'm fine with cross country flow.
Just cruising.
Yeah, it feels good.
Okay.
And then I guess the third thing, it's all like, these are all obvious ones, it feels like, but just going to Glacier, like, it's just magical, right? Like, you pick your hike, pick your spot, it doesn't matter. Like, any of it is just stunning. I went over and spent some time at a friend's cabin on Duck Lake near Bab,
Nice.
a couple weeks ago, and was like, what? This is magic. I had never been to that, really explored that area that much, and it was super cool. So I just think anywhere you can get in and around Glacier is super cool.
Well, I mean, that was my next question anyway. It's just like, what does Glacier mean to you? But I can already tell,
Yeah, I know.
Well, so we went actually, Hidden Homes team went out to take a look at a property out at Duck Lake a couple months ago.
Yeah.
And I've never been to that site either.
Yeah.
I mean, there's some wind, but the beauty is completely different.
It's so different.
And I believe it's Chief Mountain.
Yeah.
Is there? I mean, that is just like this awesome pinnacle shard of a beautiful mountainous
so
rock.
striking.
It's just a rock.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah. I know it feels a little more, it's like more prairie, like there's open prairie kind of around it. It feels a little bit like, versus, the kind of more thick treed areas that are over here. It's interesting to kind of see the different variety anywhere you go.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah, the views are different. So.
Views are different.
I love it.
Yeah. So Glacier, what does it mean to me? I think partly it just feels like, how lucky are we to be this close to a national park that's that gorgeous? People drive from all over the world and country to see it. So I think it just feels really special to have it right there. I mean, there's this element where and I think you mentioned this on another podcast, but like we have been loving our national parks to death a little bit, so we need to make some adjustments to make sure that we keep them like great places to be. But I think they'll figure it out. I think that like they're already making some adjustments, which are not great yet. But I feel like another 3 to 5 years, they're going to work out the kinks, and it's going to be great.
It's the growing pains.
It's the growing pains. Anytime we change, it's just painful.
I'll be honest, like, and me not being able to get up at 5 in the morning and go in early.
It makes me so
doing
mad.
like and not being able to do that this year is a big deal.
Yeah, it's a big
like,
deal.
I don't know. I'm probably not going to be able to do too many peaks this year because of that.
Same.
So, but that's all right. I'm still going to be climbing mountains later.
Yep.
And I already did get to go. There's going to be a spoiler alert. There's going to be an awesome video coming out soon because Hidden Homes team, we actually did that. We rode bikes up to go on the Sun Road.
Fun.
And I hadn't done
Yeah.
that in like 10 years. Oh my gosh.
It's a real deal.
Epic. And like
Yeah.
the best thing, got to do it every single like late spring. And we had a long year this year. We
Or
got to
the
do it in July.
fall. The fall can be, I mean, you catch those fall colors. Can be
That's pretty delicious.
pretty amazing. Yeah.
I would like that too. I haven't done that one.
Yeah. It's great. I highly recommend it. I think you have to be tuned into the timing a little bit more because, when they close and I don't know what.
Well, weather too.
And
Weather in the fall is going to be a little.
Yeah, a little dicey.
Yeah, it could be.
But worth it.
Totally. Well, Katie, thank you for sharing about your love of Glacier National Park. I love it too. It is magic. Magic is a good word for it.
Hard not to love.
Well, I think we're gonna wrap things up here. But the big thing is for you, how do we get a hold of you? Like, I mean, what do we do to find out how to get coaching from you, your new brand, all that stuff? I mean, obviously we're gonna post some stuff down below here, but give us your stats.
Yeah, so you can find me at katie-wood.com. And I mean, I'm in the process of changing all my websites over. So my old brand was Crowheart Creative, so you can find that too. But anyway, katie-wood.com. And then you can find me on Instagram. I'm katiewood _@work.
Okay.
At work. Yep.
At work.
And that's where I spend most of my time on social media. If I'm going to be on social media, that's where I hang out. But I have a newsletter you can sign up for, blogs, the whole thing on my website, should you be interested.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, folks, truly, if you want someone that's going to help guide you and maybe get you out of a little bit of burnout, which I know I need, so I'm going to be calling her for sure, feel free to reach out to her anytime. So thank you so much for joining us. If you want to get some people on the Hidden Home Show to help with their business, their networking, share a little bit about the Valley, the love for the Valley that we have here, please feel free to DM me. Go ahead and give us an email. You can reach us at hiddenhomesmontana@gmail.com. Ryan's going to go ahead and post everything below here as well. But we'd love some action on our site and our YouTube channel. So please subscribe. That's another big one. Please subscribe to us. We're going to keep on delivering content that hopefully you love. This is Austin Baumgarten and Katie Wood. This with Keller Williams Realty Northwest Montana and Hidden Homes Montana. Over and out. Let me do this.
Yeah.